James, we're going to talk about how a leader can become lost. And when we talk about becoming lost, how is it that a leader can lose their principles and their values? And they look into the mirror and become a person that they don't even recognize. Let's talk about how does that happen?
Well, I think it all starts at the end of the day. We're all relational beings, but it starts on the little things. And I think for a person, it's really hard for me anyway. It was hard for me not to lose relationships. Relationships were very important to me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's the close relationships is the real hard one. Because sometimes when you stand for principles, people have a way of setting up, people have a way of making the principles about them. In other words, they use the relationship as a leverage. Does that make sense?
Expand on that.
In other words, if you don't agree, if you're standing on principles, you're almost in some ways, and they don't have the same moral principles, you are destroying the relationship. You
become an ogre.
Yes, exactly.
It's really, you're basically becoming, if you are standing on principles, and when we talk about standing on principles, doing what is right, and that person doesn't have the same moral compass, so to speak, then if you are calling out then you become an ogre. Yeah. Meaning you're the bad person, you're mean, you're a bully.
Yeah.
You're all these different things. So then you become character assassination. Let's back up just a tad bit. What you were talking about, it starts in little things. James, expand on that. What do you mean by the little things?
Well, it starts on you conform in some ways. It's not that bad. It can be white lies. It can be. I'm
going to let this one slide. Basically, you're thinking, okay, maybe if I do this, it's not that bad. Although within yourself, within your gut feeling, very clearly that you're basically violating yourself. It really goes back to violating yourself.
Right.
So you kind of tell yourself that, this doesn't matter. I'm going to do this for the sake of the relationship.
Again, for sake of relationship. Mm-hmm. It's also you start excusing things based upon the person's capacity. In other words,
talk about that.
Yeah. In other words, they didn't mean it. They didn't see it.
So you give them passes.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not.
That's not their intention.
Yeah. You give passes.
Mm-hmm. That's not the person's intention.
No, it's not who they are.
Yeah. They said a very cutting word back here, but they didn't mean that.
No.
That's not who they are.
No.
They're over there gossiping about someone, but they didn't mean that. That's not who they are.
No, mm-hmm. They're hurting and they said things out of hurt, and that's really not who they are. So you don't get out of the relationship. You stay in it because you see them through a different lens than who they are. Mm-hmm. You really are blinded because, again, giving passes is another piece. You start giving passes. It's okay.
And what are you blinded by?
That is a really hard question because for all of us it's different. For me, it was the best way where I'm blinded is when a person tells me, give me time. That was a blind side. And what does that mean? To give me time. I'm working on it. I'm trying is huge for me. So the last thing you want to do is you excuse it. Well, they'll get there. I'm trying.
They're really putting effort forward. But even though you're seeing there is no effort being put forward.
Exactly. The last thing, again, you talk about ogre. The last thing you want to do is judge a person based on them trying, Mm-hmm. The other piece is the abandonment card. You're abandoning me. For me, I was very susceptible. You're throwing me out to drive. You're pulling the rug out from underneath me. When I'm confronted.
So it's really what is blinding you is really those things. The last thing you want to be is put in front of you, and you're being falsely accused by the last thing you want to be known as. So that's blinding.
Yeah, you're
right. So you're looking at yourself, and so basically shame would be blinding you.
Right, and then all it has to do with shame. The other card that I'm very susceptible to, you're hurting me. That hurt me, and it's not me that's hurting the individual. It's the universal principle. But you're hurting me. So alongside of you leaving me, the abandonment, and then you're hurting me. Which is exactly what you're talking about when you talk about shame. It activates shame. And what is the tool what is the catalyst of activating shame? Very simple. False guilt.
Yeah, so really when you as a leader stand on principles and values that you're doing what is right, and you want to have, you're going to call out the truth. When you see things that are not truthful, you're going to call them out. The reason why you tend to allow yourself to get rid of those is because exactly what you're saying. When you call out truth, then you're hurting me. That's what comes to you. And the last thing a leader wants to do is hurt someone.
Definitely.
But the
or
truth,
abandon someone.
Right. But the truth hurts.
Yeah.
The truth hurts.
But it's not.
And by not telling a person the truth is actually hurting them. But exactly what you said. When we don't know who we are, and we are actually looking at ourselves in a lens through ourselves, then these things are going to be taking root. And exactly what you said, the last thing you want to do is hurt someone. So when it says you're hurting me, you're going to back off.
And then another card is you're selfish. You're being self-centered. I mean, they'll also find in those situations little things, your little speck. Something that you did wrong. Well, you ain't no better, right? Or let me tell you about the time where you did this, and they kind of parallel it to justify what they're doing. Again, we go back to the little things. It all starts then. So for you, it becomes that when the person brings your speck out, it magnifies for a leader because again, we're very self-aware. So we look at every speck.
And we're always growing. We're always looking at improving ourselves. That matters. That speck matters to us. You're right. And so again, what happens is that they don't have any morals. They don't have any moral compass. So, but they have a pretense of it. That's what you thought, is they have a pretense of it. So when you're starting to call out that this isn't right, you're calling out the truth, then exactly what you said, they're going to start looking for the little things that you do, the little things, exactly, the little white lies. Well, you did this, you did that. Basically bringing out that, again, if you're going to call it out to me, you have to be perfect. So to speak.
What gives you the right to say you're right and I'm wrong? I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
With in a world without everything is relative and there are no morals, there's no baselines for you to call it out in those relationships. You really, at the end of the day, what gives you the right? And then again, you go back to the ogre. And in other words, ogre would be one. Of course, when we think of ogre, we think of Shrek, right?
Right.
Which in some ways there's a lot of great connotations in that movie.
It is. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Shrek was known as everyone was saying he's a bully, he's frightening. You're going to avoid him. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Shrek embraced it.
Exactly. And that's some ways what ends up doing, you can go down the path of the leader and go into doormat because there's another thing you run into it after the little things. What's it worth? Why is it worth the call?
It's not worth it anymore.
I just might as well protect myself.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I know what is right. I know what my true north is. I know who I am. But it becomes when the people around you love, it becomes a heavy battle. And it's easy, again, we talked earlier about becoming one of them. At some point, it's just easy to just lay down and die. And for me,
because the other alternative is coming under what we had already alluded to, character assassination.
Yeah, on a constant basis.
Where every little thing you are is under a microscope.
Exactly.
Every move you make, everything is under a microscope. Because it's kind of like if you're calling out, their things, now they're going to squash you. That's the character assassination. They're going to squash you so that you basically crawl into a hole and die.
And it would be, at the end of the day, you spend a lot of energy not losing your cookies.
I like cookies.
Yeah, you enjoy cookies.
I do.
So who wants to lose their cookies, right?
I know.
But it's a lot. It becomes a lot to protect those cookies.
But talk about to the audience what that means. What is
Losing-
the term losing
Yeah,
your cookies?
I figure we do a little fun here.
Expand on that. Yes.
Yeah, it's totally losing your temper, accessing what you talk emotional intelligence,
High anger.
high anger, accessing anger at a high level. And what is that? You're being violated. And so at some point, you're just ready to scream.
You burst.
That's losing your cookies.
Yes, you burst. And when you do that, they win.
Yeah.
Because now
Now
they're
they
victims.
have the data.
Yeah,
Now they-
it's kind of like they keep it's kind of like it's a philosophy. Okay, it's kind of like this here. You keep poking the bull. You keep poking at the bull, and at some point in time, the bull's going to get tired of poking at you. Then they're going to turn and they're going to come at you and they're going to put their horns over you and everything, and then you're the victim. But you poked the bull.
Yeah. And that's when you talk about, and that's where our culture is we're really dealing with for great leaders. When you talk about people without morals or people in your network without morals, it really comes down to relativism, where everything's okay. Mm-hmm. You know, back then, growing up, we used to have the phrase in the liberal we used to have humanism that we would battle as leaders with principles. Mm-hmm. If it feels good and it doesn't hurt anybody, it's great. We're at a place in our culture. It doesn't matter about hurting anybody. As a matter of fact, just do your own thing as long as it feels good.
Exactly.
And what is that? There is no what you would call moral compass for a leader today. It's a huge battle, and then we get into it hit. And we're talking right now when it hits close to home for a leader. Mm-hmm. That's where it's really hitting for leaders. It's close to home.
It is.
It's not just on the outside.
No.
But it's actually hitting on the home front. It's hitting on families.
Yeah.
It can even be mother and father. It can even be, your own children or your cousin and people that you have relationships for years. When you stand on principle, you're getting attacked on the home front too. Mm-hmm. As a leader going into the outer sphere, away from home, into what I call porch relationships, things like that, you kind of expect that, but you don't expect to get hit on your home front.
That's true. That's true.
This thing that we call relativism that's been over decades is really separating family, mother, father, child, whatever. I'm just using it as illustrations. Church family, whatever. It's really coming down. Because at the end of the day, true leaders are standing on principles. But you're losing relationships in the process. And that's what I'm saying. It all starts with the little things. And for me, the last thing I want to do is lose close relationships.
Right.
That's really was important to me.
Right. Well, it really comes down to, James, what you're talking about. You're losing relationships, but it goes more than that. Mm-hmm. It comes down to character assassination. Exactly what you said. It's the little things. So if you are if you're walking down the center, as leaders always do, the leaders are neither left nor right. They walk down the center. When you walk down the center and stand on principles, you're basically coming across as basically what they would call you as, hypocrites or whatever. You really coming under tremendous amount of scrutiny, character assassination, all the way to where they want to cancel you, because there really is this era about it that I don't want to be told. I don't want to be told what I already know. Mm-hmm. I already know that this is wrong, but I don't want to be told that this is wrong. So I'm going to continue to stay in an illusion, basically an illusion that this is wrong, where a leader will walk down the center and say this is wrong.
And the question is, why do you want all that? Why do you want all that abuse, so to speak?
That's a true statement. That a character assassination is exactly that. It is abuse. Because then they move one step farther to be canceled. They want to cancel you. You never existed.
And then it came with an illustration that we always talk about emotional intelligence is we all know about football and the goal line. Mm-hmm. And in the normal football, defense lines up to protect the goal line. So you have to go through the defense to get through to the goal line to get the touchdown in normal football. Well, in this type of world that we're in, the goal line, there's nothing in the way of the goal line. The defense is not lining up in front of you. They're lining up in back of you. And what they're doing is they're going after your cookies.
Yeah, they are.
We're going back to the cookies.
I like my cookies.
They're throwing darts from behind, which then make you turn to either justify yourself, and that's the worst thing to do, is to justify. But they're forcing you in a position. They're making false accusations, what you talk about, hugely character assassination.
And you come up chasing ghosts because, again, if the defense is behind you, you don't know. Again, if defense is in front of you, you can see it coming at you head on. If it's behind you, you get hit and you don't know where did that come from.
Exactly.
So then you wind up chasing ghosts.
Yeah. And it's exactly. It all starts with the little things you realize you're in. And then what happens is once you realize you're in, you have to make a drastic move because little things, at the end point, you find yourself justifying something that you would never, ever do. And you see how far away you came from your principles. So at that point, you make a real drastic turn. And you say, enough's enough. This is wrong.
You're drawing a line in the sand.
You're drawing a line in the sand. And
because let's go back to where you said, James, you came so far from your principles. The real truth is you came so far from who you truly are.
Exactly.
You become this person, this character that is not who you are. And what I'm talking about is, okay, when you are standing what doing is right and wrong, starts out with little white lies, exactly what you said. Starts out with little white lies. You keep on letting yourself go. Next thing you know, you become a liar where no one can believe you.
And I would actually even change that word to little justifications.
Yes.
Let's build off of that a little bit. You start justifying. I think that's a lot better word than lies more I think about it. It's little justifications.
Yes.
For the sake of the relationship. I'm not a bad ogre, so to speak. But you start doing justifications.
And the next thing you know, you basically you don't know yourself where the truth, that's why we talk about lies. You actually become a liar. And the real truth is the liar that you become to yourself.
You lose yourself in the process.
You really do, and you keep on lying to yourself because you keep on justifying. I am this person, I changed for the better. This is who I am. Or, it doesn't matter. I didn't hurt anyone. That's a really good thing we like to tell ourselves. It's not hurting anyone.
Yeah.
It is hurting you.
Yeah.
It may not be hurting those around you, but it is hurting you.
And that's what we would call dormant.
Yes.
In multiple levels. For me, it was worse than dormant. It was almost lost my soul.
Yeah.
Because when I saw how far and how close to the edge I was of losing any sense of who I was. And again, for who I am is I believe in do what is right. I was losing enough was enough.
Yes.
So that is when I then definitely alerted the defense now. Now is when they get really going.
Yeah.
They then go after character assassination in multiple ways.
They want to take you out.
You have activated them.
Yeah.
Now they're going to be hitting you from back from all kind of accusations, whatever they can to make you justify yourself. And they're going to just throw at you and throw darts at you till you lose your cookies, so to speak.
Exactly.
And so for me, and that's why I talked about this recently in a speech, at the end of the day, how do you combat that when a leader finally says enough, and I'm ready to go back and get my passion back, get who I am back? How do you do that? What's the way out? Because now they're really now the defense is alerted.
So what is the way out, James?
And it was really what Orange Rose taught me very clearly. Well, it started with the little things. When Orange Rose started bringing back the principles for me, and one little one was, let your yes be yes, your no be no. Be true. Do not just say yes and not show up. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. was the beginning of rebuilding my principles.
Because you learned to become a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And as a people pleaser, you can't keep everyone happy, so you're constantly saying yes. But eventually, you became, quote, flaky, and you justify yourself for being flaky. When reality is the flakiness is you're overpromising because you are basically a people pleaser and you're not standing for yourself.
So that was one. Mm-hmm. Second one was truth and honesty. Orange Rose really drilled that into me. Truth and honesty. First of all, truth starts with yourself.
It does.
You need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
We talked so many times of how I lied to myself. I lied a lot to myself. So first of all, truth and honesty really comes down to being honest with yourself. And that, somebody out there, some of our people out there may say, "How do you do that? How do you lie to yourself?" Step into Orange Rose Services and we'll
it's
have a
your
conversation
blind sides. Yes, it's your blind sides that you don't see
there
it.
There it is. It's the blind sides, and that's why you probably would ask the question out there, how do you lie to yourself? Because the reason why I go to our audience, because I didn't believe it neither.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to know, I can tell you, but I didn't see exactly. Orange Rose Services brought the blind sides. But I didn't know I was lying to myself because I really did a good job of it.
Yeah. We do. We do a really great job convincing ourselves, especially when, like you said, we get into the game of justifying ourselves, and we do a really good job of justifying ourselves. And, I'm not hurting anyone.
And how
you're hurting yourself.
And how does that happen? Sorry, Nancy, I mean interrupt.
No, that's okay.
I didn't want to lose my thought. But how does that happen? How does that happen? It's the absence of principles. Mm-hmm. There's no baseline for yourself.
No.
You lost your principles. What I was raised with was do is right. And, how I was told that, my great aunt always told me, be a good boy. And that sounds like, but it really comes down to the core is do what is right. Mm-hmm. Don't waver, stand firm on the principle. So the one way, as you continue to get out of that, go back to the principles.
Yeah.
Stand on them. Let the principles be a mirror to who you are. Mm-hmm. Principles don't lie.
No.
Your actions will put your actions in line. Have the principles a mirror to your actions.
That's true because, again, it all goes... You can talk the talk, but do you walk the walk? Yeah. What if you talk the talk, but do not walk the walk, that is where you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, another thing you would say is one of the principles so truth and honesty was the rebuilding of a principle. Mm-hmm. Honest with myself and honest with people around me. But first of all, I had to be honest with myself.
Yeah.
I'm not what I think I am. Mm-hmm. And some of that could be ego, or some of that could be the false voices that you think you are a dog crap on somebody's shoes. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So there are false beliefs. That's where you have to start being honest with yourself. Truth and honesty first with yourself. When you start being truth and honest with yourself, then you're able to sit across the table from people around you. Whether they reject you or not doesn't matter. You're going to be truth and honest with them. Then you become trustworthy. You start trust. That's the other piece, is you start trusting yourself. Then other people trust you, and then you start trusting other people. Mm-hmm. But again, if you're lying to yourself, how do you trust yourself? Because that's another pathway back is you got to start trusting yourself again.
Yeah.
That is you're rebuilding a trust with yourself.
Yeah.
And
because again, you allowed yourself, you pretty much let yourself down when you allow yourself to become somebody that you were never created to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's really, you destroyed yourself.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So again, you don't turn around and hit the defense head on. You can't.
No.
The way you do it is they've already are gnawing at your credibility. They want you to justify where you're at. You can't justify in a relative world where everything's relative. So you start rebuilding yourself with your principles. You start clinging back to them. Let them be your guide. Trust the universal principles. Mm-hmm. And we can get into conversations as what is right and wrong. But at the end of the day, we all know what the universal principles are.
We do. That's exactly true.
So that's the first step. Then the second step is for me was to embrace who I am based on because those universal principles will also tell me who I am. Mm-hmm. So then I embrace who I am based on what those universal principles say. Am I a person who doesn't lie? No, I don't lie anymore. I can start looking and seeing action, and I no longer lie to myself. I can start embracing the person I am and the leader that I was called to be. That's the who you are.
And also, as you become who you are, James, another thing that you have really learned to do is stay in your lane.
Oh, definitely.
You no longer have to be all things to all people.
That is huge.
You are able to be at peace with just you and be able to stay in your lane, and you do what you do best. And again, that is where we come to the point where you're you and I'm me, and we're perfectly fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I was going to get to on the purpose in a little bit. But there's also a part of who you are. I personally know who God says I am, and exactly, which will go into where you're leading into the purpose, because that's the fun part. That's the next part. Once you get aligned back with the Creator that says this is who you are, this with your weaknesses and your strengths, because they're both together, this is where you belong. And in my weaknesses, I always give glory to God.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, I embrace both. And so now I'm comfortable with who I am, not in my skin, in God.
There you go.
So now I'm ready to go to exactly where you were taking us, Nancy, is to the purpose. That's my lane. Oh, my goodness. I'm so focused. Once I got my foundation back, I'm so focused on the lane. That touchdown. We all know, when a person makes a touchdown in the Super Bowl, the joy in the pieces.
Well, here's the thing, James, as far as talking about the touchdown in a Super Bowl game, okay? This is what we're talking about, staying in your lane. It's so important. In order for a team to make a touchdown, each player has to know exactly the position that they're playing and stay in their position. Because if they get out of their position, they can pull someone else out of the position and the ball's missed.
Or if the wide receiver looks back at the defense and sidetracks them, they'll lose focus of the ball.
Exactly. So that is really what is very important, to stay in your lane, because again, as a team, and that's why we talk about a leader always says we, never I. That's why a leader always says we, never I, because again, we are all part of a team. We are all in our positions where we belong so that we can make that touchdown.
Exactly. And that is how the goal line's in front of you, and you never leave focus on the goal line. And what is your lane of getting there? What is your small part in this great purpose that God has for each one of us as leaders?
Exactly.
It's so overwhelming that you don't hear a thing of what the defense is saying.
No, because they only have power if you allow them to have power. That's the only thing. If you give them the power, that's the only reason why the defense has power. If you are focused on the offense and you're focused on the goal, the defense doesn't have power. Because, again, it's behind you. It's not in front of you.
And we said a lot in this podcast. I think we just opened the surface of it. But it was just a wide brushstroke of what I want. And one of the things that we said in one of our speeches, it is not easy.
No.
This is not easy. However, the other path, that's destruction. There's a difference. This is extremely hard. But to give in and lose your soul, that's worse than not easy. That's you're losing your soul.
It really is.
Don't get off
it
that
really
train
is on how you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
It really is on how, again, we choose our destiny. We choose our destiny. Do you want to live in freedom, or do you want to continue to be a slave to others around you? It's really what it comes down to. And exactly what you said, James. If you're a slave to others around you, then you're in dormancy. You're not going anywhere. You're not impacting anyone.
And we just touched on a little bit of what the character assassinations are. But I know each leader out there that we're talking to has their own list.
Yes.
And I want to challenge our leaders out there to give us a line, give us your list. Let's, and, because the most important thing for me was sharing my list with Orange Road Services. Mm-hmm. It is exposing the darkness. When you actually share your list and say you're exposing the darkness of
the darkness comes to light.
It comes to light.
When the darkness comes to light, you now have the power to overcome it.
I know when I said share your list, just like, what are we doing here? It is not for us to know your list. It's actually for you. So if you could email and share it, or if you can just email it to yourself.
Yes.
Share your list. Because that is the huge part of the emotional cleansing piece. It's first of all, call it out, what you're feeling. Because in this world, they're not allowed to feel that as a leader.
No.
Because if you would say it publicly, what will happen is you will be crucified and you will have to justify and you will be judged. But one of the things that Orange Rose helped me tremendously is for me to share my list. Mm-hmm. What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? This is wrong.
Yeah.
Yet the false guilt keeps me from saying it, for proclaiming it, for saying this is wrong. So that's that's the challenge I give to our listeners today. Share your list.
I agree. Thanks, James. This was a really great conversation, and I definitely look forward to our next conversation. And yes, I would actually encourage, right along with what you're saying, James, share the list. And it's really to confess to yourself what it is that's what your enemies. Again, when we confess who our enemies are, and we're not talking people, we're talking the principalities. When we confess who our enemies are, we can now overcome them.
Yes. James at orangeroadservices.com.